I worked as a flight attendant for a few years. I was born and raised in Texas, but moved to New York when I was 21. So when I found out at the beginning of a weekend-long trip that I would have a couple overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night he got off work. And the following day, we were going to meet up with our dad, who lived about an hour away. So I get to the hotel downtown. The crew and I check in, and then we each head off to our own rooms. It was a short elevator ride, and I get to mine. We're not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud, hard knock on the door. It was only around 1 or 2 p.m., and I hadn't called either my dad or my brother to let them know I was in town yet, so they wouldn't even know what room I was in. I assumed it was maybe one of my crewmates, so I headed to the door. Before even making it to the door, however, a loud male voice on the other side started booming. He said the front desk sent him about the bathroom problem I allegedly called in. And before trying to open the door again, he said to unlock the door, miss, and that he needs in. I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything to the front desk. I am petite, and while I don't take any crap from anyone, despite my size, I still lean on the side of caution. Slowly inching towards the door to look out the peephole, all I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall, and easily over double my weight, so no way in hell I was going to unlock the door. I responded to the guy, telling him that he must have the wrong room. He continued pounding on the door while constantly trying to turn the handle. And he was telling me no, he needed in and he was getting in the room one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time, this guy was still determined to get into my room, pounding and yelling. Lucky for me, though, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor. When the security officers stepped off the elevator a few seconds later, I can hear them in the hall approach and ask the guy who he was, what he was doing, and telling him he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately got hostile and aggressive towards them. The front desk clerk and I are still on the phone, and they tell me that the police has been called and are on the way. In the meantime, I'm trapped in my room and terrified. Long story short, the cops show up pretty quickly and manage to arrest the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or something. I later found out that the guy was also wanted in connection to a string of break-ins and violent sexual assaults in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the minute I entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after that, but it still rattled me for the rest of my stay in that hotel. This happened a few years ago, and that's important for later. I was walking my dog like I always did. We stayed in a small part of town where nothing ever happened, and most people would be in past 7. I used to walk my dog every evening, around 6 p.m., so not many people were out, and I walked him that way every day. I usually went with my mom, but that night, I went by myself because my mom was busy. I was walking by the main road, and the other side of the path was a shop. My dog decided to do a poo on the ground right outside the shop. Embarrassed, I picked up the poo and saw a silver car pull up and stop right outside the shop. At first, I thought it was someone stopping to go into the shop. I picked up the poo and stood up straight and was about to continue walking when the man in the car rolled down his window and said hi to me. I could hear he didn't have an English accent and thought he must have been on a holiday and needed directions. In the passenger seat was another man holding a notepad and pen, and in the back was a dog cage. I said hi, and he asked me where a certain hotel was. I told him where, and he thanked me, and when I was about to walk away, he asked, "How much for the dog?" I stopped and looked at him confused, and he asked again, "How much for the dog?" I told him she wasn't for sale. I noticed the man in the passenger seat was writing something in his notebook. The man laughed and said he loves dogs, and then asked, "How much for you then?" Him asking how much for the dog was creepy, but this was beyond creepy. I said that I'm not for sale and laughed awkwardly, and again, the man in the passenger seat wrote something down in his notebook. He laughed back, and I said I had to go and started to walk fast back home. When I turned around the corner, I looked behind me and saw the car was following me. I didn't want to go home because then they would know where my house is. So I went down an alleyway where the car couldn't go, and I lost them. About a year after, I was in a Zoom call, and a boy from another town, not far from mine, and a few people, and a teacher, were telling each other about weird things that have happened to us. The boy said he was walking his dog, and a silver car pulled up next to him and was asking weird questions about his dog, and then asked if he had any sisters for sale. I told him what happened to me, and we knew it was the same man, because he also said that there was a man with a notepad in the passenger seat and a cage in the back. And again, a few months ago, my mom's friend said that she was walking her dog, and a man in a car offered to buy her dog and followed her. This happened last night. I was almost home after a long day of traveling, and it was approximately 1 a.m. as I rounded the corner and stopped at the intersection right near my home. The light was red, and I slowed to a stop. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 3 people on the sidewalk. They were all dressed in black, and wearing white face masks or face paint, or a combination of the two. One was crouched on the ground, while the other 2 were standing crooked. They were as still as statues when I came to a stop. But when I looked at them, they started crawling and walking towards me. I was exhausted, and apparently my instinct in moments of terror is to just laugh and shake my head like it was a joke. They were super close to my car, but thankfully the light turned green, and I was able to get out of there before they reached my car. Since you could see the corner of my house from the intersection, I ended up just driving for quite a while and then turning around once I felt like enough time had passed. I didn't want them following my car and pulling into the street I live in. I would imagine it was just some teens pulling a prank. Afterwards, when I was thinking about it, it was a school night, and most people wouldn't be having sleepovers in the middle of the week. When I was single, I ventured into the world of online dating and stumbled upon a guy named William. Our initial interaction seemed harmless enough, and we exchanged messages. But one day, things took a bizarre turn, and when we exchanged numbers, he initiated a call. During our conversations, he adopted an unsettling demeanor, referring to me as his pet, and subjected me to weird intelligence tests. Despite passing the tests, his behavior grew incredibly strange. One particularly alarming proposition involved his desire for me to visit him and star in a homemade horror film, where he envisioned me as a belly dancer performing in scenes of questionable nature. One of the chilling scenarios was of bathing with him in a tub of what I would hope is fake blood. One of his unsettling ideas was to lure me into the woods and experiment with hypnosis using an emerald necklace. Feeling terrified, I made the decision to sever ties with him. As I went to his profile to block him from further contact, curiosity led me to go through his photos first. What I discovered only fueled my unease. He was a bald man covered in tattoos and wore creepy white contact lenses. He would also pose in unsettling scenarios. He would be in blood-covered garages while wearing a ski mask. Now, without hesitation, I blocked him, hoping to leave this creepy encounter behind me. Years later, just when I thought I had escaped his eerie presence, fate threw me an unexpected curveball. While I was driving home from the mall, a vehicle pulled up beside me. To my horror, it was William. His eerie grin and knowing wave sent shivers down my spine. I watched him as he sped off, and the memory of our conversations and his eerie demeanor came flooding back to me. That night, I made sure all my doors were locked, and I double-checked the windows. I couldn't help but wonder what could have happened if I agreed to meet him in person, but I was grateful my instincts led me to block him after all those years. From that day on, I was more cautious about who I interacted with online, realizing that not everyone is who they seem to be.